Yeah, so hi everyone on the line. My name is Beck, and I work for a sales media and consulting company called Flip the Script. So today I wanted to go into an omni-channel cadence or omni-channel sequence, and what are all the different mediums that you can be deploying over that sequence? What are the templates included alongside? How do you make everything personalized, and how do you make everything pop so that your prospects want to respond? So I'm going to start with what I call the Encyclopedia of Sales Plays. So this is an encyclopedia of all of the different sales plays that you can run on a one-to-many basis. So the difference between everyone who has come across any of my self-righteous monologues online knows that I am a big fan of personalization. And what I mean by personalization is one-to-one messaging only. So if I'm going to send something to Tyler and I can send that same message to 3 other people, then that means it's no longer personalization, it's relevance. So this is a way to build and sequence response. So far left here, we have 4 categories. Far left here is going to be inbound, and this is going to be true hand raisers. So that's only really two different plays. Demo requests, this is people who want to know your product, want to see your product. And so that's demo requests and prospects who came in through the chat box. Far right over here is going to be cold outbound. So this is going to be people who have done triggered with no action. This is someone within ABM, for instance, that you really want to talk to. But this is, you have no one-to-many premise for reaching out. A lot of times people will go based off of buyer persona within this bucket. Middle left is going to be what I call postbound, and this is going to be non-hand-raising marketing leads. So for instance, content downloads, webinar registrants, buyer intent, free trials, event attendees. So this would be an example of a postbound trigger, is if I were to send a message to everyone after this event and say, hi, reason for my outreach is I noticed that you attended, the Vidyard Summit, then this is a postbound play. So this is non-hand-raising marketing leads. So bridgebound from a high level is a way to segment and automate people into a sequence based on some kind of action they took or some kind of trigger that wasn't in relation to your company. So this isn't a marketing lead, but this is a way to segment people based on a commonality. But essentially, within every every sequence that I am running roughly about the same amount of steps and types of steps, but I am building a sequence for every single one of those plays. And I'm automating what I can, and then I'm leading, think of almost like a Mad Libs format. I'm leaving spaces for my personalization where I talk about that person in specific. So I've got 18 steps over 21 days here. And the first step is going to be a LinkedIn research step. I've got 5 emails, 10 cold calls, and 2 videos in here. So we're going to go into the text of these videos a little bit later and how you can structure those and incorporate those in there. But essentially, the LinkedIn research step is going to be at the front, and it should take you no longer than 5 minutes to hunt 3 personalized premises. We're going to get more aggressive. I want you to notice we're going to get more aggressive near the back end of this sequence. So MJ Hoffman, the author of Why You Now, did a lot of extensive research on when you should sequence different items, different levels and mediums of outreach. And what he found was that most salespeople are very aggressive in the beginning of a sequence, and then they peter off near the end of the sequence. So they essentially are too much up front before the person even knows them. And then they peter off teaching the prospect that if the prospect just waits long enough, that they will go away. So he suggested that you flip it, that flip the levels of aggression. And so I deployed this in several of my teams, and it worked extremely well. So in terms of the sequence, I would almost view it as 5 pods of outreach, starting on day 1 and getting more aggressive near business day 21. So you essentially want to be cooler in the beginning, be cool, be personalized, add value, so that they get to know you in a very, very healthy manner. And then near the end, speed up so that they essentially get the impression that they need to respond to you. But essentially the 5 buckets of personalization, number 1 is self-authored content. So this is anything about that your prospect author themselves. Keep in mind the asterisk mark of personalization is you need to be hunting after something that you can relate back to your company. So I wouldn't do the 10-80-10 rule of like, hey, Beck, I noticed that you have this painting in the back of your, in your studio. Want to talk about Vidyard? You need to be thinking it through of what's the personalization premise that I can then hook into my value prop. So the first one with the most engagement that you're going to get, the most response is going to be self-authored content. So when you are reaching out to someone about their work and you are validating, not only are you personalized, but you're validating that their work was meaningful to you. So you're going to get a lot of response bucket here. I've gotten up to 90-95% of people, decision makers, responding right off the bat. You want to tease out an excerpt, hook it to relevance, and then stick the landing in the CTA. Second bucket here is engaged content, not quite as strong as bucket number 1, but this is content that they liked, shared, commented on, but didn't author themselves. I'm going to go quickly here. I got to speed up. The third bucket's going to be profile line, headline, company line. This is anything that someone wrote about themselves. So people were viewing LinkedIn as a resume in the beginning. So they're going to talk about themselves in the about me section, obviously, usually in third person. So it's kind of funny. But that's going to be the third bucket. Fourth bucket, and again, this is the descending order of where I've seen results, is going to be your junk drawer, schools attended, personal interests, hobbies, recommendations, skill endorsements, etc. So again, with the asterisk mark of if you pick out my love for Billy Bean, for instance, then you need to be ready of how Billy Bean and my love for him, or love for his work, relates back to your product. And then the last here is going to be company level data, M&A, blogs, posts, hiring, website language. But again, the more detailed, but the more brief you can be, the better. So I've seen a lot of people send out templates that look personalized, but aren't. For instance, I notice your company is growing. So the difference between saying, I notice your company is growing, and I notice your company is growing, grew 17% in the last 3 months, just added a VP of sales and 5 reps. One, I know you're personalized, one, I don't. So I'd say full disclosure, you want to make sure that you give them a quote, you quote them, you don't summarize, and you give them a piece of personalization that they are positive that you know who they are. But essentially the first email is going to be comprised of 4 lines. Google did a study on how you read emails on laptop. Their research showed that you start at 2 o'clock and you go clockwise. So that essentially tells you that your prospect is going to start at the end of the first line, then go to the end of the last line, then go read at the beginning of the last line, and then get around to the middle. So what that tells you is they want to know who you are and what you want before they want to know anything about your company. Problem is most of us focus on the value prop. We spend all our cerebral calories here on, what is the perfect value prop that will make someone want to buy? Reality is they won't read it unless you nail who you are and what you want beforehand. So we're going to pattern interrupt by putting the reason for my outreach, and you're going to put personalization in the front line. So it's pattern interruptive because 99.9% of sales reps are going to say, hello, my name is Beck, and I'm with AT&T Wireless, and we sell yada, 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 and don't you care because we work with all these amazing customers, and these customers are awesome because they work with me. We're the number one end-to-end, blah, blah, blah. Like that's how most emails go. So you want to pattern interrupt and put the personalization up front. This should be your longest line. The second line, you want to hook based on leading, leaning, and lagging indicators. Get to know your buyer, not in terms of your product, not in terms of your value prop. Figure what these are for them. And then you're always going to be in the right realm. You want to request one time to unpack the content in the CTA, and then you want to push-pull technique. So push-pull technique is basically when you communicate to your buyer that either way, you're rooting for them. So be very direct in your ask. One of the biggest mistakes I see in outreach is people aren't clear in their ask. They're like, hey, I noticed you downloaded this content. Yeah, you have any questions? No. Cool, see you later. Like that's how the conversation goes. Be direct in your ask, but have a velvet glove around it. I want a meeting. But either way, I'm a fan of your team. Keep the good articles coming.